Today we're stepping inside the charming London terrace townhouse of fabric designer Juliet O'Carroll. Renovating the space to her liking, Jules ensured her home always feels cozy and inviting, perfect for her young family. Her signature fabrics adorn every surface and somehow seamlessly blend together in a way that feels uniform and sophisticated, yet playful and light.
I always love a quote from Nicholas Haslam, and he said, I always buy what I love and I never really worry about it because it will always be held together by what I love. So you don't need to think about whether things are going to work together. And I think actually if you've got a kind of strongly established aesthetic and you do really know your own taste, then I think that holds true.
She shares her favorite design elements.
I've always been a really big fan of Bunny Mellon. And what she used to do, she was the kind of American garden supremo from the 60s, was she used to do a lot of painted wooden floors. So I thought if we painted this wooden floor and we put a pattern across the floor, it would actually join up these two spaces rather than that they would both float on either side. So that's what we did.
Walks us through her quirky art collection.
So this painting is a kind of joke reference to how much I really don't love cooking.
And highlights her lovely tablescape. To watch Juliet's full home tour ad-free that features more amazing bedrooms, scan the QR code or click the join button below. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes. Opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Jules, this is Figgy. We're in London, come on in. I'm Jules. I'm one of the co-founders of Parker and Jules, which is a printed collection of fabrics and wallpapers. This is my home, and we are near Portobello Road, and we are also with Figgy, who is the newest addition in about 6 months. So thank you for joining us. So I came to this house after the lockdowns, and I spent a huge amount of time in the mud in the country looking at the same view. And I was really keen to actually experience the energy of the streets. And it was essentially a coming home. My youth was spent in and around kind of Ladbroke Grove and Portobello. And so we've had this house for 3 or 4 years. And we literally had a 4-month window to make it our own before school started and work started. I think, I really love this area in terms of it's very green, it's very charming, and when I found this house, I'd also looked at several very similar terraced houses on streets very close. But this was a house where you walked in, it automatically had a really nice feel. It was entirely white, and it was quite tired, but I just felt that, say, it hadn't been much around too much, and the work that had been done was very much in keeping with the architecture of the period. So that was what really drew it to me. And we could do a quick turnaround because it didn't need structural work. When someone else made an offer and we didn't get it, and I was heartbroken, and then they withdrew for reasons unknown to me, and it came back to us, and it felt like it was meant to be, and I was really happy. So here you are in our entrance, and you're going to come in under the dodo egg, and you know that you've arrived at Jules's. As soon as you come into the hallway, you're going to know that you're in a fairly kind of maximalist house in terms of someone who loves colour and loves pattern. And what I wanted was that you were going to have this green thread that ties the house back to the country, which is essentially where we'd grown up as a family. And so it had a kind of joke reference for us, but was also going to pack a punch and be really fun visually. And that when we'd arrived in here and I'd seen the house, this was all kind of white and beige. And this floor, the Victorian tiles, Edwardian, had been ripped out. And so I went and found these, and these kind of directed, in a sense, everywhere that the interior was going to go. Because A, they're patterned and they're fun, but they've got this kind of warmth of colour. And I wallpapered the entrance hall because I wanted it to have that extra warmth rather than a kind of flat painted finish. And it's in this really kind of cozy oat colour so that everything has an added warmth, because we have a lot of grey days in London. And then what I wanted was we were going to layer a lot of colour and pattern onto that warmth. And so the minute you come in, like the first thing you'll have is this mirror, but it's in copper, and that's like the warmest metal that you can get. And again, I kind of love the fact it's got the leaves all around it and kind of echoes the country. And then my other big love is Paris, and Provence. So the minute you come in, we have a little kind of reference to the streets of Paris. And then when I'm walking into this space from the other way, what I really like is you're going to see the Route du Soleil. So this is my joke to myself that I'm going to get back to Provence and I'm going to see the sunshine. And it's mirrored by this one here, which is all about Arles. And again, so it's just kind of joke references to places that I really love and have a kind of personal reference. And so that essentially is what kind of leads you through. So we're going to come into London through Provence, as I joke about it. And then here is just a kind of wall of things that resonate for me. So this is a daughter that my picture did. This is a joke about the fact that the boys are fun in the house and they're always a good laugh. This is London, because we're in London, and this is it from the 18th century. And this is a present that I was given by my girlfriends on a kind of significant birthday as a joke, slightly, with me and the family outside this little house. And then this is a collage that someone did with all of our prints from Parker and Jules of a chair. And so then these are all just things that for me have like a small kind of personal reference and a bit of a joke, but in a good way. And then I wanted this kind of colour kind of crossover and reference. So you're going to go from this really fun grass green, and then we're kind of into the grape, which is a colour that I've used all the way through the house called nether red. And I've also used this colour all the way through the house, which is light bronze green, but I actually call it poison. So, and then you see the kind of grass green is going to kind of link back to the dodo egg. And then these doors were here, which I was so happy about. I love these doors. They're like kind of Edwardian meets Art Nouveau. And around them, we've got this really fun border frame. And that's something, say, that Parker and Jules does that, connects back to our prints. So that's how you're going to come through. And probably the first place you'll go into is our kitchen. But you could also go in to the sitting room. Where would you like to go? We're going to go into the sitting room first, and you're going to see its duality this way. So essentially, I always had a vision for this side of the space, right? And the way that I work when I'm thinking about decorating a house is I literally lie in bed and I walk through it in my mind's eye and I picture the colours and the zones. And then I have these occasional dark blanks and I just walk through those and I don't worry about it because I know I'm going to fill them in afterwards. So this space to me was always clear that it was going to be calm, it was going to be grown up, and it was going to be much more pared back in terms of print and pattern. And I think when you do that, you have to have quite special pieces which are going to really hold their own. And so essentially this room is about Lizzie. And so I've always hankered after a painting by this artist, and she is the kind of anchor of the space, and I love it. It's a riff on Jacobean Elizabeth portraits, and they always used to layer in meaning through the objects in them. And butterflies are essentially a reminder that life is beautiful, but it's also transitory. It's going to go quick. So make the most of it to a degree. And of course, she's just so beautiful. She's a real joy to look at. So she's this kind of dark frame space. Everything in here is lime painted, including the ceiling. And then actually, that's why I really love this light, because it kind of echoes that lime paint and gives us that kind of mood enhancer. And then this upholstery is very modern, and I wanted that as a kind of contrast to having this kind of more traditional property. So this is like a caravan sofa. Yay, figs! And so they're a French company, and I just love the fact that, say, they do these layers on the cushions and all these really beautiful kind of slub linens. So, and I immediately feel chic, which is quite a feat. So yeah, I was really pleased that we kind of could layer these in. And then actually I went down Goulburn Road, which is Portobello Road, which is houses near, and I picked up the rug and the poofs and the side tables. And so those two, for me, they're like, it's nice to source locally. And I'd always had a vision that we would use these really kind of saffron coloured silk cotton mix curtains. And I love the kind of luster of them in the sunlight and in the evening. So I think then when kind of looking at this space, there wasn't really much to change in terms of the bones of it, because it had this beautiful fireplace and it had the bay window. But what I did do was I layered in these really pretty raspberry tiles, which are shaped like the fish scales. So they add another kind of layer of colour. I also reduced the opening of the room and framed it out so that essentially it would have more of its own zone. And then all the kind of pictures and colours, they just kind of resonate backwards and forwards in conversation with each other. And I like the way that you have this difference in texture and materials that kind of, I suppose, adds other layers to it. So from the kind of 50s wicker through to the velvet, and then this really dense kind of heavy pile rug, but in this kind of lighter area space. I was going to put the TV in there, and I told the family that it was going in this shelving unit, and they all literally fell over backwards and said, "You must be joking." So then that meant that actually we finally had a vision for what the back of this space was going to be. So this had been one of the dark zones that I always walked through, and I didn't really have a vision for in here. And when we moved into this house after 4 months of work, everyone sat in beanbags in there with a TV on the wall, because obviously the family won and the TV went there instead of a lovely painting. Come on, figs. And I then went, right, we're going to get really cozy in here. So this is a Parker and Jules print. And I always wanted to do one of these kind of arrangements of lights. I've seen them in various places, and it was definitely inspired by. These are again caravan lights. And here what we've got then is this really great mix of pattern and colour. So this kind of geo fabric is a great base for pattern, and you can layer up. And then the Tree of Life print by Claremont is one of my favourite prints of all time. Not least because it's one of the most ancient prints. So, you know, it's essentially from kind of Elizabethan crewel work onwards through to chintz. But it's got these lovely colours in, and it kind of echoes really traditional old English houses. And I've just, it had to have a place. That was how I felt. So here, this again is Parker and Jules. And so I just don't, what I feel is essentially, I always love a quote from Nicholas Haslam, and he said, I always buy what I love, and I never really worry about it, because it will always be held together by what I love. So you don't need to think about whether things are going to work together. And I think actually, if you've got a kind of strongly established aesthetic and you do really know your own taste, then I think that holds true. So I tend to just buy what I love and put it together. So for example, I never really thought, like if you put these on a mood board, you probably wouldn't put them together. But actually, it's just all fine. They all hold together. And then in here, there was no joinery. And what I thought was, we need to frame it out. I don't want a black box on a wall, which is exactly what I got, but that's the way life is. But then it kind of, you know, it's got its kind of magic bits around it. And this now is essentially one of the parts of the house that we use the most, clearly, because it's so cozy. And I hardly ever go in the beautiful, calm, adult sitting room space behind. but I do spend a lot of time hunkered down here in the evenings with Figgy the dog. And this rug we had made to fit the space. And essentially, I love the fact that this is like a really open geo. And so you've got your kind of small scale geo here, your big wide open geo here, and the colours are based on the joinery. And so if you stand at the back of that room and you look through, you're going to go from this kind of calmer, more sophisticated palette into this really cozy, layered space, which is kind of richer and darker. And so this is perfect for evening. So yeah, I love it. It's super cozy. So this basically is a colour that runs all the way through the house, and this is nether red. And then this here is invisible green. And I think these are both little green. And then what I did was I took a few shades darker for the back of the bookshelves, and that is called sumac. And I really love the name of that colour. And then the rest of the joinery in this room is a really soft pink called Beauvais Lilac. And I think that just kind of picks up on the warmth generally. And the ceiling is a couple of shades darker than the walls. So it kind of just adds to that kind of slight coziness and warmth. So essentially, yeah, I'm a big fan of art, and there's a lot of things that you kind of watch and people you keep an eye on, aren't there? Or there's periods that you're drawn back to. So say over here in this corner, we've come back to Paris and to France. So, I mean, look at this. It's like a really kind of lovely sunlit view of somewhere like Notre Dame and, Ile de Louis. And again, you're under the bridge in Paris. And these paintings are from Provence. And then I bought these at auction actually in Ireland when I was living there. And I just love the colours in them and how they feel so backlit, even though they're watercolour. So those kind of create this nice framework of warmth and colour above. And then in the bookshelves, well, I mean, clearly I have a thing for dogs and for cats, and surely everyone else does, right? But say we had a whippet for a very long time. So Tippy is still with us. And then, the cats and the dogs. And then when I bought my very first flat, the first thing I got was a champagne glass like this. And so when we got this house, I saw these on Portobello Road literally the next day, and I went, oh my God, that's like a celebration in itself. So I got these glasses because they remind me of the first time I ever got the keys to my own place. So basically, oh, hi Figs, you happy out there? Living your best life? I definitely collect these type of tables. So these kind of Syrian inlaid tables. I think that I love the way they're decorative as well as useful. And you have that kind of layer of colour and pattern. So they're something I've always got my eye out for. And then here, give me a quirky apron on the bottom of a table and I'm all in. And a chinoiserie handle. Yes, please. And I love the fact that, this is like a little Edwardian side table, but it's been spray painted and it's really glossy finish. And I was like, oh, those colours are perfect. So that came home. And then I didn't know what to do with one of the children's things from school. So now we have a tuck box forever tucked under there. And one of the people I've sourced a lot from this house is called Milfiori, and she is in Denmark. And so we have quite a lot of these kind of Murano lights, which I'll show you as we go around. This is a really standard London city layout. It's a terrace house. You're going to come into that entrance hall where you're going to have a kind of view through and up. You're going to have that kind of standard sitting room, smaller back sitting room, long kitchen, and then you're going to rise up through stairs and bathrooms. There's nothing complicated about it. So now you, me, and Figgy are going to go to the kitchen. Let's have a cup of tea. So now you're in the kitchen where everyone comes, because you're always going to get a drink or a nice cup of tea and hopefully a good dinner. This kitchen is actually pretty much as we got it. And one of the reasons why I got this house, because I loved the kitchen. But there's a lot of crucial differences. So When we bought this house, the Aga was here, which is one of the things I fell in love with. Even though I've never turned it on, it's like an art installation of its own for the kind of love of English country interiors. And the cabinets were here, but the tiles were like kind of white, suburban, and there was a lot of heavy cupboards at the top. So we sprayed all the cabinets and we echoed the green from the outside, going up the stairs. And then I got these emerald green zellage. And I'd always wanted a butter yellow kitchen. And so finally I got it. And again, this is kind of lime painted. But I was worried because when I saw this space, it felt like you were in a bit of a tunnel. It didn't feel kind of cozy and connected. You had these units all down one side and then various kind of floating pieces. So what I did was I ordered this unit, Figgy. Figgy's just having a go in the garden. I might have to get Figgles. Figgy, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. You need to come with me for a minute, okay? Let's just talk, okay? So, right? So basically, I bought this butcher's block island because what I felt was it would anchor this side of the room. And then I designed this kind of cozy banquet seating because essentially then this side had its own kind of gravity. And I've always been a really big fan of Bunny Mellon. And what she used to do, she was the kind of American garden supremo from the 60s, was she used to do a lot of painted wooden floors. So I thought if we painted this wooden floor and we put a pattern across the floor, it would actually join up these two spaces rather than that they would both float on either side. So that's what we did. And I absolutely love the fact we kind of kept a bit of the wood grain coming through. So I'm glad that was a win because it was a bit of a risk, like these things are when you haven't done it before, but it worked. And this here is super cozy and we spend a lot of time sitting around this table. And what I wanted then was to layer on a lot of colour. So again, this is a good example actually of, this is a really pretty colour. And what I really kind of like is that this is our slightly ugly colour. So this is like that kind of dyed oxblood. And then there you've got your kind of sunshiny yellow. And then you've got this real pop of kind of unexpected red. And again, you know, this is sitting next to this really soft, pretty green. And so you've got this kind of play of unexpected colours through the space. And you've got the ones that are going to kind of soften. And then you've got the ones that are going to really draw your eye and punch out. And so the art here and everything on the wall really punches out and it makes a really strong graphic line, which I think is quite fun. And so as you come in, I mean, who doesn't love a skirted table from the 1980s? I definitely grew up with a lot of them. And it was a chance to use Parker and Jules' fabric. And then actually I really love how a round mirror or, you know, a flower-shaped mirror breaks up a lot of what you would call the hard angles in a space because rooms are so linear and box-like. And so actually having these kind of circular elements is really fun. And then this is an Irish artist, Francesca Ryan, and they're almost abstract but not. And then this is an English artist, Mark Entwistle, and he is behind us as well, so we'll get to him. And then I was given this for my birthday, and my 50th, we hosted it at an English circus, and this is actually a print of that circus. And then behind is a painting from Provence. So we've got that real kind of link in terms of the reds and the colours and the greens. And my daughter is going to come tonight, and she has just been at cookery school for like 3 days in Ireland, and she is going to cook for us this evening. So I've done my bit, yay, which is making the table joyful. And then she's going to come and show off her newfound skills, including like literally plucking a chicken, apparently. So not that I'm expecting her to do that tonight. This is, you know, let's have that cozy supper. Let's celebrate that autumn's coming, but it's also, you know, kind of season of fruitfulness. And so, I mean, I kind of like, obviously, that more kind of layered mix and match aesthetic. Partly actually from practical purposes, you know, if you drop one, lose one, it doesn't matter. You can, you know, just bring in another pair of things rather than having a full, you know, this is my set. But for example, you know, these were, I think it was an American designer for Anthropology who specializes in blue and white, Mark D. Sykes. And then I love the idea of having your food on a really dark plate, and the fact that I think it becomes almost more kind of sculptural and art on that and kind of rich. And then I saw these napkins when I was in France, and they say OC, which is our surname, but they're also slightly phallic, so I think they're just hilarious. So they're in. And then I've got a kind of range of colours with the candles. And obviously it's dahlia season in the UK and America, so that's quite fun. We've got this kind of colour palette, so you're going from all the shades of blue, touches of red, into the butter, and then again that kind of grounding forever green. And yeah, I love these, aren't they fab? Super quirky. Kind of just ready to layer on top. So this is actually a Spanish table, I think. And they have these amazingly kind of decorative fun legs. And so I think that kind of adds another element in itself, which is nice to then kind of play with in terms of patterns in the space. And then I suppose the final thing for me that's a bit of a kind of a jokey reference is like these glasses they're very 1970s. They're basically my early childhood in a glass. So they came and then they kind of riff nicely with these. And then these are like this woman, she hand plaits these, I think. As you can see, they still have their little flowers on. And so there are kind of, you know, rustic back to the country moment. And I think I did make a bit of a mistake when I bought the silver in Portobello Road because yes, it does tarnish. But today, for you and me, it is particularly glistening and shiny. So yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to my Irish supper tonight. We're all set. If you do ask me to cook, essentially what I would do is this. So this painting is a kind of joke reference to how much I really don't love cooking. And so then we come to here. So this is like a working zone for the kitchen. Obviously I don't do that much work in the kitchen. My job's at the table. And you know, it's a London kitchen, so there's not going to be huge islands and this much space, but we asked for this painting because I love the kind of youth and exuberance. And I have a daughter about 19, so, you know, it kind of reminds me of her generation, and I think it's so charming. And what I did then was, I love collecting things. I have a real passion I like to have my eye out for things. So I had this shelving made so that essentially I could have a lot of fun with the collecting and the displaying. And I was in Spain quite a bit, so I collected a lot of this hand-painted Andalusian pottery. And then this is like a modern British ceramicist, Emily Mitchell, but she's really inspired by Delft. And so she kind of echoes up to the top. And then I just kind of broke that up with high street buys. So like these ones are from Anthropology, but they're by this woman, Natalie Leet, who is a French designer who I've always like totally followed. And this is when she became affordable to me. And then everyone has their like station, don't they? So this is like the kind of breakfast station. And again, you know, just all these references to the country and things that really inspire me. And I kind of like kind of joyful and colourful. So yeah, this is where we hang. You're welcome to come and tuck in. Oh, I suppose I should tell you behind. So when my children were young, we used to call them the owl and the pussycat as a bit of a joke, because he was really small and fat and calm, and she was really playful. And so anyway, I saw these and I got those as for them. And then this was a gift for my birthday from a lot of girlfriends. And I love Flora. She's just extraordinary. So she's also Andalusian pottery. So she kind of links back in. And then this is a South African ceramicist who really inspires people like Grayson Perry. And he's called Hilton Nell. He's literally in his 90s now. But I love how charming it is and quirky. and peculiar. I mean, essentially I'm drawn to the kind of more whimsical and fairy tale elements. Life can be pretty drab and grey and XL, and anything that there is to cheer it up, I'm in. Including like, yes, let's collect ceramic fruit. So that is a kind of celebration of, life and colour here. And then going out to the garden, the curtains are from Parker and Jules. So it's one of our really joyful signature prints. And what I did was I echoed that. So you have it going out to the garden and then you have it going into the utility. So when it's cold in the winter, I pull this over. And this is a Parker and Jules print. And then so for now, and I have kind of one colour and one colour, because why have one when you could have two, right? If not three. So this was all here. And I love the fact that you have this kind of long space for everything useful behind. Come and see. So we took the floor through. I've always been meaning to hang this because, who doesn't want a disco in the laundry? But I've never got that together, so it just resides here. And then this is essentially the kind of working zone. So here you have our wallpaper, and this is like brinjal, so it's really dark purple. And I think it gives it a kind of cozier feel. And it's the same here. And this is an old science laptop. So I kind of repurposed that and then, added in some shelving and just the kind of fun bits. But it was laid out like this and we didn't change it. But actually this was just kind of full of IKEA shelving and white goods. So now it is I guess it's just another fun space and it's full of joy. So actually I got this in America, but this is like, the cats, because that's what they are like when they're at home, aren't they? And then, guess what? There's another cat. This is Figgy. I need some Figgy images of the dog, don't I? And then there's kind of the weird and wonderful things you collect on life's travels, like, who doesn't want a miniature peacock chair to imagine people sitting on late at night? And sometimes I do the laundry here. It has been known to happen. However, sometimes I make cocktails. So boom, we could have a margarita. And then I kind of like to keep things that have a bit of memory and resonance for a bit. So it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago. And so I've kept the kind of little birthday queen for a day. And so that's now above the washing machine as a kind of joke reference. So that's all the way through here, out to that kind of wisteria-clad window. It's really cute. My career path is varied and I would say was slightly comedy of errors, but I had my youth in Dublin, and after that I worked in fashion and in product development, and I spent a lot of time traveling and having things made in India and in Hong Kong. And around 29-30 I set up a homewares business on my own label, the irony of which it was called Mine Forever, was never lost on me. But my first client was Liberty, ABC Carpet and Home, Le Bon Marché. So I had this great client list. I was making beautiful things in India, but all I ever did was really just slightly break even and lose money. And I got a few years in and I went, you know what, I would like to sell a skill set and not, be dealing entirely in boxes in India. And so I retrained in interior design, and I worked for an amazing American interior designer who's based in the UK. And then traveled quite a bit with family and through life. And on the back of that work and studying, I went and studied the history of architecture and interiors with the Wallace Collection and the Buckingham University. And when I was halfway through that, someone I didn't know very well in the village, who was a print designer, asked me to come and talk to them about fabric for the interiors world. And I literally just had lectures on 18th century, 17th century tapestry and damask and blah, blah, blah. I was super excited about everything that informs our design. And I went and chatted to her, and she rang me up the next day and said, why don't we do the collection together? And so essentially that's how Parker and Jules was born. So she brings fashion and print knowledge, and I bring this knowledge and history of interiors and kind of Englishness and the kind of vernacular and what makes a great English print and relates back to periods in history. And together then we have run that business for about 7 years. At some point after I plied you with wine and food and stuff, you might have to pop to our small downstairs powder room, which I actually love as well, funnily enough. But here it's basically just all the funny, humorous little pictures or things I've been gifted. And it's bright turquoise with this kind of dark blue. And then, so say, do you remember like the king had his coronation? So, you know, things like that are in here. Just the kind of jokey stuff. That's there. All right. So up we go. Come with me. So now we're going to go up the green stairs. And we're not going to do like my son. So he swung off this banister and literally pulled it out the other day with great enthusiasm, but I've just wedged it back in. And when you come up here, this wallpaper flows all the way through the house. And it's this kind of warm, earthy colour, which I think is really nice because these colours are so great against it. And what I wanted to do was then have it that you're going to have these kind of graduations of colour that again repeat what was down below, because I think it's really important in a house that you have continuity, so that the eye is going to, in a sense, have these anchor points that follow through alongside moments of surprise. So these colours appear again and again through the house as kind of anchor points, but then individually the rooms are all really different. So come. So first things first, I'll show you here. So you know, these are like just a kind of bright, like pick and mix kind of sweetie shades against here. And then when you come up, we have our London reference. So I bought this for my husband, and it's the London history of tortoise. I mean, who doesn't need that, right? But just to remember that the country is very important. We also have the mushroom picking. But the colours in this are so perfect, aren't they? And it's quirky and it's very English and quite eccentric. And I love that kind of juxtaposition, even though they're both prints and they therefore have a kind of link to them and a flow. So you're in the bedroom. I'm here too. This is, we got the big bay windowed room looking out over the street, and I love this room because it's cozy but it's calm, and we got to really play actually with a lot of Parker and Jules. So I used our wallpaper, and I love this coromandel flower, we call it, and you know, it's based on an Indian block print, so therefore, and I think when you're working with a print, you do want to reference its kind of cultural heritage or what you associate with it. So with that then we have the ikat. And this again is one of our prints, but you know, the ikat is one of the most ancient of prints. It arose simultaneously across the globe in various kind of folk communities, indigenous. And so I love the timelessness of an ikat, but also I think it can fit into any interior. So this actually remained a very empty wall for a long time after we moved in, a bit like that downstairs room in the back sitting room that was like a blank space. And then I found this chest of drawers, and I loved how this essentially kind of references something kind of Middle Eastern, or, you know, this pattern is very unusual, but it fits really well with a block print. And then this is a 1970s Paris mirror, but that shape really echoes into here. And so then this is another ikat. But you've got the different scales, so they link backwards and forwards. And then you've got your neutral, aka the stripe. And this is one of Parker and Jules' kind of signature stripes, and we call this scroll stripe. And this is on a slipper chair that we are making with someone called Bora and White. And again, actually, this is in sumac, the legs, which is one of the paint colours we saw downstairs. And so then this is a collection of paintings, and the artist in the sitting room is also up here. And I love this colour. It's so unexpected and kind of joyful. And I think that the way this man paints is essentially he goes out into nature, he looks at that scene, and then he comes back and he paints from his imagination into a colour palette that, you know, he's really drawn to. And I really love that kind of referencing of reality with fantasy, and the colours that he puts together, I think, are extraordinary. They remind me of like a Milton Avery. So I'm never going to have a Milton Avery, so I'm definitely having R.J. Ballinger. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are with this. And then again, this kind of say, like, you know, you've got a heavier piece of furniture here, and then you've got a lighter piece here. So you get this kind of like it's a pair, but they talk to each other because of their differences rather than being an exact pair. And then here you've got your window looking out, and then next to it we have our imaginary window. So this painting is called The Gardener, and I just love that, as does my husband. So we have no idea what she's fantasizing about or thinking about as she leans into her window with her cigarette in her rather short, suggestive dress. But I find her evocative and fun. She's just like, you know, where does your imagination take you on that journey? She's great. And then coming into this space, I mean, yeah, who doesn't fantasize about having a dressing table, having the time to sit at it and to, you know, act like a lady? But the reality is actually I tend to use it much more when I put a cover over this so I'm not distracted by myself, and I do some work. But I looked long and hard for a piece like this because I wanted something small enough to fit in the bay window. And this is a Swedish designer, I think Carl Malmsten, and this is the Birgitta dressing table. And he designed these specifically for a hotel project where he was the architect. And I think they're very charming and just the right size and scale for here. And say in this window, you can see like the main window is all painted in cream, but then the inner windows are in this kind of green. So again, you've got this kind of flow of colour and pattern. And, you know, I feel like this is my Diana Vreeland moment. The eye has to travel. And that is definitely a mantra I hold on to when looking at how you're going to approach a room or interior. And I added in these blinds after a little bit, A, to keep out the light, but B, also actually because, again, it just all works and you get to introduce something else. There has to be some plus points to having a fabric company. You can definitely always have another pair of blinds then. I put fabric into the cupboards here. And I think it's probably worth noting that when I saw this room, it was completely white, and there was a row of kind of cupboards there, and there was no fireplace, and essentially, therefore, this was kind of reimagined and put back into the room. So I bought this and asked them to kind of knock it out and to put the tiles in. And when I was a little girl, in my bedroom, I had a shell mirror. So I asked my husband if for my birthday, he would get me a shell mirror, and here it is. And I love it. The colours really echo. And I feel as well, it's a slightly fantasy moment having a shell mirror in London. Who was I kidding? But still, it's there and I love it. And the American interior designer that I work for, she used to collect the constant spry Fulham pottery vases. So obviously, you know, I wanted to too. And this is my selection in black. And these were from my grandparents' house, and they used to have them in their entrance hall. And so the minute you came into the house, they'd be on an Irish table. And I love them. They remind me of family and the homes gone by. And they're also just kind of beautifully elegant and that Egyptomania period. So yeah, that's that vignette, so to speak. And then for the bedsides, I kind of wanted there to be these elements of humour. So I have the boy, and my husband has the lady, who's a bit more suggestive and topless. And then I think this room feels slightly granny, and obviously that's not a goal. But that's where I thought that having the damask headboard and something that was slightly kind of glittery and changeant would be a good plan. And I took the damask and I reversed it. So therefore, actually, you get these kind of strié effects of the gold through, which I think is just a fun contrast to the patchwork quilt. And then actually after we'd been here kind of maybe 6-8 months, I was at an antiques fair and I saw this and, you know, kind of literally ran over and smothered it because clearly it was perfect. It was all the colours, and it's so lovely to have something really old and beautiful as well. So yeah, that is where, you know, where we rest our heads. And Figgy has been known to join us occasionally, but only in the morning. Yeah, that's the bedroom. So when working with print and pattern, I think actually have a really clear understanding of the rules, and there are a lot of rules to working with print and colour. And I think if you know them really well, like anything, you can then ignore them and you can play with them. And so, you know, for those that are interested in the rules that underplay working with pattern and print, you know, first and foremost, it is colour. So, you know, you could either work through having a really kind of like monochrome, working through shades of one colour, or you're going to work through having, you know, taking like a tricolour where there's going to be on part of the wheel, but everything's going to be in the same depth and tone, and those colours will really work together. And you've got to think that if you're working with quite similar tones of colour, anything that you put in that's really different is going to pop. So I think about colour and pattern as flow and pop. What do you want the eye to flow over? Where do you want it to pop? And, you know, your attention to rest. So those are, say, just two of the rules, for example. And that also, you know, the key rule when you're looking at print is the scale. So different scales are going to play together, and different types. So kind of stripes and geos at like a neutral, florals, botanicals, you know, they're going to have their own. They need space and they need these neutrals with them. And then like this thing about, say, cultural references, you know, we've all got inbuilt cultural references of patterns that we associate with each other. And so those two should be borne in mind when you're looking at what kind of pattern you're going to layer together. The history of it, you know, where your eye's used to seeing it, and it's kind of, you know, cultural authenticity and fit relevant to your house. So yes, on that basis, I really do buy what I love, but I think a lot and look a lot at whether I feel that flow, and that's what I really kind of use for my journey around the home. Well, so this is actually a bathroom that everyone can use, which is slightly heartbreaking. However, this was the size and scale of the bathroom, and we thought, well, we'd like to keep that, but it would be, we felt pretty selfish turning it into an ensuite. So it means that if you're staying, you too could have a bath, although it's hardly ever used. But what it did mean was we could have his and hers sinks, which, like, for many a marital couple is a dream come true. So I was thrilled, and the whole room in terms of its design, I based it around this painting. So he was having like a studio sale, and I always love a painting where it feels like you're having a view through a window, because it's like it gives you another window in a room. So I kind of took those colours and that feel and then translated it into here. And I've always loved the Zedge tiles. I love the fact that the light flows over them and they have a kind of, you know, a difference in colour throughout the tiles. And by adding in the trim at that kind of picture rail height, I think that's quite a kind of fun detail that I took into the shower. And then I love the way that it all echoes off this Millefiori. This is like a vintage Murano light. When I was doing the house, I didn't want to have to really redo the electrics because we were on a really tight time scale. So I kind of kept the holes from where the spots are, because I'm not that keen on spots. And actually what I did then was I just, you know, put in these spotlights so we don't have wall lights on either side. And actually it's worked really well. I'm pretty pleased with it. It's not too glary, and it means that this is just its own kind of, you know, vignette, I suppose. And then this is our fabric. And so there's your, you know, stool / laundry basket. She's just there to cheer you up in the bath. And then we've put in Parker and Jules fabric again as well, obviously, because we have a lot of it. So this is our Eversley. It has the swans, and I just think it's really charming. And it, you know, reminds me of that Tree of Life fabric. And I think that that's got a really kind of great colours for in here. And then I redesigned it so that essentially we put the shower into this space, and then you could create a recess for the all-important loo. And that means that then it's got a kind of nice flow as well. And you kind of move through. And then did a lot of kind of little things on a shelf, and like, you know, kept my birthday cards from people like my daughter, and just kind of cute things that you're always going to see and remind you of happy moments. So in here, this is actually a wallpapered room, and this is the same design as the wallpaper that runs throughout all the hall of the house, and it's called Dragged. So it kind of echoes the feeling of a lime paint and gives the walls just a very slightly kind of broken texture, which I really like. And then again, so that you've got that kind of echo and rhythm and repeat. And here the floors are checkerboard, just like they are in the kitchen. So you're going to have another kind of echo and repeat, which I think the brain looks for, along with those moments of surprise that makes it sit up and take a bit of notice. So yeah, this is very calm and very peaceful. My husband says that this colour palette isn't for everyone. However, it is for me, and I really like it. So that's fine. We can just roll with it. There's no one else who needs to come in. Come on. Here, what I kind of like, just before we go into the next bathroom, is I like this kind of contrasts of different colours and how they feel a bit off, and I think that makes them more visually interesting against this warmth. And then in here, we're going to come in and you're going to be in this nether red, which is the colour that, you know, runs through the house a lot. Not quite red, not quite purple, slightly sludgy. And yeah, let's have it with brown. So I think this is quite fun. These are like, you know, just to kind of stripe off. And then I did tiles that were all yellow and brown. And I had to literally map it out and say where the yellow were going to be and where the brown were going to be. So I had to draw in each place where the yellow were, and again into here. So it's kind of, I just think it's functional, but it's quite moody maybe, and hopefully it's a bit chic. And I like an old-fashioned loo. I like the fact that, say, this has, you know, a lot of brass and the high level. We're in an old Edwardian house, so it feels appropriate. It's quite fun. But why not put that with a bit of leopard print? So underneath the sink, we have the yellow leopard print, which kind of talks back to the tiles. And then I was in this shop the other day, and they had a pile of these towels, because no one else wanted the granny brown towels with the leaves. So I got them, like quite a lot. And so these now are the guest ones. Yeah, so that's this little room, and it's got this little leopard print blind as well. And I think it's kind of cute with its big super shell light and a kind of bamboo mirror. So if you come and stay, that's where you'll be, because you won't be in the big one, right? It's all about you. I mean, it's not your home unless it's about you. And I think that, you know, knowing what you love and why you love it is really important when making a house a home. I suppose I think about it in the lens of, say, I know nothing about football. Like if I watch a football match, I don't know who the players are, I don't know the teams, I don't know where they are, and consequently, I find it very difficult to engage with or to be interested. And what I feel with the home is that, say, the more you know about the things you have in your home, the more you have an understanding of the periods, the times, and the more kind of you love them, then essentially the more kind of true to you it is. And I like the idea that a home is, it's somewhere that people come in and they feel immediately comfortable, and they're going to kind of, you know, relax and bring their best selves.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.